Today's project is this curio cabinet. I've never worked on one before, so I was really excited. It does have some pretty structural issues with the legs, but it's beautiful. As far as the finish, it's in really good shape. It has beautiful shelving and it has the original glass. And so my idea is just to kind of jazz it up a little. The first thing I decided to do was take off the pediment. It's just screwed in from the underside, so it can be replaced later. Then I moved on to more of the structural repairs. I had a few legs that really needed some repair. I love using these wood syringes. I'll link them in the description. You can leave the wood glue in there and it doesn't dry up because it has the little red cap on it, so it keeps it fresh in there. So I used to use some other wood syringes, but these are perfect. So I'm just going to use the wood glue. I'm going to get it all into those areas and I'm going to clamp it up and really just let it sit overnight and just do a really good repair on that leg. So the finish is in really good shape. There's no like deep gouges or a lot of scratches in it, but it is tired and it needs to be refreshed. So what I've decided to do, since this is an old finish, is to use lacquer thinner. And it's just going to take off a lot of that grime and build up any kind of greases or oils or waxes. I'm not necessarily trying to get down to raw wood, but you'll see it really just cleans it up. And then after a really good scuff sand, then I'm going to apply gel stain. I'm just using the lacquer thinner with a Scotch-Brite pad and I'm just going over the surface, applying it liberally and just taking off as much of that, any kind of greases or wax that I can. So after the lacquer thinner, I gave everything a really nice scuff sand, cleaned that off, and then I'm going to come back with a gel stain. This is General Finishes gel stain, and I'm using a combination of nutmeg, and then you'll see later I also use antique walnut, and it's really easy to apply. This is not a penetrating stain. Gel stain just sits on top of the wood, and so it almost acts like a paint, but it doesn't obscure the wood. It's just like totally refreshing the finish, and it's just beautiful. So to glam it up a little bit, I decided to go ahead and wallpaper the back. This is a beautiful wallpaper I found through Rifle Paper Company. I decided to center the paper in the middle, and then I'm going to cut 2 small pieces for each side. That way when you look at it straight on, you're not going to have any weird seams in the middle. I wanted the seams to be to the side. So I just got a rough estimate there, and then I cut it with a little bit extra to spare. I'm using a wallpaper paste. You're just going to brush it on. I do one side at a time, and then I'm going to bookmark it together, kind of let that paste activate, and then I'll actually apply it. You can either draw a straight line just to make sure that you have everything completely level. You can use a level. This happens to be a laser level that I have that I've used for other projects. So I'm just attaching it to the top of my tripod, and it'll project a nice red line on the back of the curio cabinet, so that'll make sure I know I have that wallpaper lined up straight. I have a laser level line on the right side of the paper, and so I'm just lining it up to make sure that it is level. Now I'm going to smooth out any of the bubbles, and I have a wallpaper spreader, and I also use my Bondo spreader because it's very gentle too. And then I just go through and make sure that I don't want to squeeze out too much of the paste. I just want to make sure that there's no bubbles. Now I'm going to find out where the pattern matches. So I'm going to have to unroll the paper, and I'm just holding it up to see, okay, where do I need to have my cut so that the patterns match? I'm just doing a rough estimate, and then I'm going to cut it, giving myself enough room on both the top and the bottom. So I've measured the space on each side of the existing panel, and then I've cut with just a little bit extra on each side. What I've learned with doing wallpaper liners is that you don't want to give too much space, because it just makes it harder for you to cut later. So this is me wondering, oh my goodness, I just cut into $100 wallpaper. Did I cut it wrong? So sometimes, you look at a piece and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm cutting the wrong thing. And then I have to think, okay, wait, it's a little backwards, because the left side is actually going to go on the right side, because that's where the pattern matches. So sometimes things can be a little tricky when you're doing wallpapers and you're matching patterns, but it all works out in the end. I'm going to go ahead and do a dry fit before I apply the paste. I'm just going to tuck it in there, match up my patterns, trim a little bit on the top, trim a little bit more on the bottom, because I don't want to have too much extra, because it makes it really difficult when I put it in if I have too much to trim all the way around. So I just want maybe an inch or so on each side. That way it just makes it easier to cut. Now I'm going to make sure that my seams are smooth. Going to use my wallpaper spreader just to make sure everything is smooth. Then I'm going to use my water mister and a microfiber rag, and I'm just going to make sure that I get off any of the wallpaper paste that has come through the seams, because you don't want that drying on the wallpaper. I'm using my X-Acto knife and a putty knife to just make all of my cuts. Now I'm going to work on the door. I did have a little area that had some kind of a scratch around the handle, so I needed to sand that smooth. And then I'm going to come back and do the same thing that I did with the body, is I'm going to apply gel stain. So I give a really good scuff sand, clean it off with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water, and that just also kind of helps get rid of any of the greases or any of the oils on the finish. And then I'll go back with the gel stain. I'm using Osmo's hard wax oil as my sealer. It's super easy to apply. You just wipe it on, wipe off the excess, let it dry, give it a nice little scuff sand with a really high grit, maybe 400, and then reapply it again. 2 coats is sufficient, and it provides a really nice, durable finish and a very low luster, easy to live with look. Because I removed the pediment, I need to cut a little piece of trim that will fit in that area to fill in where the pediment was. So I just picked up a really cute decorative piece of trim from my local Lowe's, and I'm just going to cut it to match, and then I'm going to stain it the rest of the color that will match the curio cabinet, and then I will glue it on. And it actually worked out really well because there's a little groove and it just fits beautifully in that little groove. And if the future owners want the pediment, they can just pop off this little piece of trim and re-screw on the pediment. Even though I did choose to take off the pediment, I am going to clean it up and make sure that it's ready to go for the new owners. As a final touch, I decided to add a pinstripe of gold wax around the door. So I use a very thin piece of painter's tape. I lay that down, and then I put another piece on top of that, and then I pull the first piece off, and that creates a perfect little striped area. Let's look back at the before. It was already a beautiful cabinet, but had some major structural issues I had to fix with the legs. But once I got that fixed, and a little bit of gel stain, a little bit of wallpaper, and here is the final product. What do you think? Isn't it pretty, styled as a lacquer cabinet? Wow, I did keep that pediment so that it could be reattached if the future owners wanted to, but I like the way it turned out. I'm really glad I decided to go with dark wallpaper. So I really looked around sourcing something that I think would go really well with the dark wood, and I think this complements the dark wood really well. And you know, I like gold, and so I considered putting more gold on it, but in the end, I think the pinstriping around the door is perfect. It's not overdone, just more of a complement. And you can imagine having a little tassel hanging off that handle. I think it'd be beautiful. Gosh, love the curved original glass. So glad I could save this one. So I love it. Tell me what you think. Thanks so much for watching.